Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I'm Joel A. Erickson. I am joined, as always, by Nate Atkins. This is the first impressions edition of the podcast. We're getting started a little bit later than we do normally on a 1 o'clock game. Easy explanation is we're in New York and New Jersey is very far from here. Like, it's not actually, but it's kind of far from here. So, we made the trip in 30 minutes, and that's like a very quick one. So, anyway, we're recording it late. Most of you are going to be hearing this in the morning. Nate, I don't think we've ever done this. Normally, I try to give like a big picture lead-in intro. I think the big picture lead-in intro gets into the hero of the game right away. And I think we might just pick the same one. Unless you really want to zag. If you're going with who you're thinking of, I think I just kind of want to go along with you. So,
all right, well, I'll let you take that, and then I'll zag. How about that?
This was Anthony Richardson's best game as a pro. 20 of 30, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, 2 rushing touchdowns. No like super explosive runs, but very good in short yardage. Incredible near the end zone. Both times they were near the end zone. There was a run to JT first that they couldn't block. We'll get to the couldn't block part in a little bit. And Richardson gets in on the next play. They did a good job of keeping him kind of on the perimeter, but I don't even think the big picture is the fact that this keeps him in the playoff race, as we're both currently watching the Bengals have tied it. That's not good for the Colts. You want the Bengals to lose this game if you're a Colts fan. But I really don't think with the Lions coming up and Denver still on the schedule that this is as big a game for the playoffs as the fact that it just keeps it a possibility. The real thing is this is the game that everybody in Indianapolis needed to see. And by that, I mean Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay, Anthony Richardson probably needed to see it from himself. The locker room probably needed to see it from himself. Not that Richardson lost confidence in himself or that the locker room lost confidence in him. We've heard the opposite from them all week. But this is the game where it was like, okay, it can come together as a passer. It can really come together as a passer because they had to have him pass. They tried to run it with not a lot of success, really all day. This game ended up coming down to Anthony Richardson making plays with his arm, and when they needed it in the fourth quarter, needing 2 touchdown drives, 8 of 10, 129 yards, touchdown passing, touchdown rushing. This is what you needed to see. There's no way around it. I think everything about the performance really is what you wanted to see from him.
Yeah, it's all that and more, because it was one thing for him to come out and make plays. We've seen him make plays. The one thing, if those plays amounted to a win over the Jets, we knew it was a winnable game in that way. But to come out and be the reason, the engine for the victory with his arm, because it ended up being a really hard game where the Jets scored 27. They're high in the season, and there was this back and forth nature in the second half. And like you said, they suffocated the run away. Like, I thought the game plan for the Colts to try and go and win this game was to lean on that run game, which is certainly the game plan they used. But they ended up having 35 carries for 91 yards, an average of 2.6. Most explosive run was 10. The only good thing you could say about the run game, really, well, 2 things. Number one, it forced the Jets to focus so much on it. But the other thing is that it got those 2 touchdown runs. And that was Anthony Richardson really with willpower, just running over people with his shoulder at the goal line. And just kind of crazy to think of the stat line he put up. 20 of 30, 272 yards and a touchdown, 9.1 yards an attempt with a 106.5 rating. And he hit a 39-yarder to Alec Pierce, but that was the only one. 2 throws. I guess he ended up having 3 throws over 30, but this wasn't like how you would have guessed he'd get to a high yardage total or a high yards per attempt. He did it with 20 completions, a lot of dicing up the middle of the field, intermediate type throws. and being just very safe with the ball. So this was everything that they hoped to see out of him. Huge momentum boost for them as a franchise more than anything this season is, like you said, to be able to see that out of the guy that they still hope is going to be the franchise quarterback. But it's all been hope, because if it was belief, if it was full-throated belief, they wouldn't have benched him. So there was an element of doubt they introduced. He needed a big game to kind of get himself, get the team into this positive mind space again about where they're at the quarterback position. And for one game, they're absolutely there. So he is the easiest choice for hero of the game. But I told you I was going to Zach, and I'm going to go with Shane Steichen, because Shane had a decision to make this week coming off last week. Many of us, on this podcast especially, didn't think it was a decision. We didn't really understand why Joe Flacco was still playing. But initially Shane came out and said, I'm sticking by Joe Flacco. Still think he gives us the best chance to win. Said it again on Monday. And that was kind of the lowest moment, most kind of collectively angry moment for this Colts fan base, certainly since I've gotten here. So in that sense, maybe it wasn't a hard decision, but it was a matter of, he did this bold move as a coach to sit down his quarterback and use this to get him right. It had only been 2 weeks because of how poorly it had gone with Joe Flacco. And was he willing to go right back there? Because if he was going to, what can't happen at this point, he knows it based on what he said on Wednesday. You can't have this yo-yo act where he's just sometimes on the bench and sometimes starting. That just never seems to work. So he made the decision to go back to Anthony Richardson. I thought, handled – really, you take his week from Wednesday to Sunday. The Colts needed the absolute best week out of him as a leader, as a play designer, as a quarterback coach, play caller, all of it. When you combine the quarterback situation with the situation he had in his locker room with players on defense coming out and talking about lacking preparation and work ethic, which they've said is not about the coaches. They were going after specific players, but it still was a situation for the leader of the team to handle. And Shane had to really grow up in the past couple of weeks where, frankly, however you feel about the benching and whether you think that's what helped Anthony Richardson get right or not, or any of that, like the messaging and the way they addressed it was not good in the beginning. It was a real learning moment for Shane I asked him this on Friday, what'd you learn in this? And he said, like, every decision you make really becomes like a referendum on you, good or bad. It's such a you under the microscope, you on an island type of thing, making this decision. And I thought he grew from a lot of that. So the way he addressed the team in the team meeting over the comments in the locker room, the way he handled the next quarterback decision of, didn't get out to the media till he heard about it. He addressed it with the team, told them directly before he told us. They got on a team message about it. It seemed to be a moment where they moved on. And not only that, the most impressive thing is the game plan that he put in for Anthony Richardson today and the whole offense, where they played to the strengths of this team, even if it didn't play out that way in the box score. But they ran the ball 35 times, gave Jonathan Taylor 24 carries and a consistent workload from the first quarter through the fourth. He got Anthony Richardson back playing confident and involved early in the game with that fake handoff QB sweep to the edge that got him into the end zone. I thought that was a very important moment for a quarterback who'd been through a lot, and most namely, he's trying to restore the trust between him and Anthony Richardson is the biggest thing I think he risked in deciding to do the benching. And so that was a good moment to get him right there involved. And then, just a lot of things we've been waiting to see this season that often we've made him the villain of the game because they haven't played like this. But you got to give him credit when they go back to it. And, he's moving the pocket. He's getting Anthony to throw on the run. He's just some of the creative ways they use Jonathan Taylor early in the game I like. Like one play they had him run out of shotgun, kind of a sweep right behind Ashton Doolin on the move. They were doing a lot of cool stuff, and the Jets adjusted well to it. It didn't maybe have the effect in the numbers the way that you'd like, but what it did was that run-heavy approach then opened up opportunities in the passing attack, and they just really seemed to dial those up well. And it's been confounding to me why it took till the 11th game, or I guess for Anthony Richardson till his 7th start to use the Jalen Hurts playbook. I have a theory on why, which is that the They knew they could hit some explosive pass plays in the opener against the Texans. That was the game that Anthony Richardson got kind of beaten and battered around, hit above the shoulder, slammed late on plays. And the NFL didn't make calls, and they didn't seem to respond much when they sent those plays in. So I think they were trying to protect him for a while, but they played into the worst parts of the team and not the best. But now that they've benched him, they've gotten over that fear of losing him from the field. If they've already chosen to take him off the field, that fear, that Band-Aid has to be ripped off, and they have to get back to everything's an evaluation and a growth procedure for him. And evaluating his durability and his ability to play through contact and win in these situations by the goal line is one thing, and then setting him up in situations where you learn about his growth as a passer is another. And I just thought Shane aced the test, and that ultimately is why this game went the way it did, is that all season long, Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, like, it's fitting that they usually are our villains of the game when things don't go well, or it's the quarterback position in Shane when it hasn't been Anthony. And this week, they're both the heroes. It is such a tied together thing where they're helping each other out or they're hurting each other. That this game was all about Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen boosting each other back up right at the moment when they had to have it.
Yeah, one of the other reasons I just kept thinking about in the locker room after the game is that this game is such a big deal for Richardson. It's not just the numbers. It's that outside of getting Richardson comfortable, like there was a point there where the run first, handoff to JT over and over again plan looked like it might cost them the game. Well, I mean, in addition to the defense, but it looked for a while there like that the offense was just not going to score again. And so they built a game plan that was designed to support Richardson as much as possible. And then it ended up that they needed him to win the game by himself anyway, which I thought made the performance even more impressive. Now, far too many Colts players said that they thought that the run heavy game plan and running Richardson ended up paying dividends for them in the second half in terms of his comfort level and his rhythm, for me to say that they're wrong. But like basically when Shane Steichen drew up this game plan, he wasn't thinking Jonathan Taylor's going to rush for 2.5 yards a carry or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. He wasn't thinking we're going to need Anthony to win this game with his arm. Like I know at one point earlier this week we were talking about like what if he had 32 passes, and you said how he better not have 32 attempts. So he had 30. And that was, now I will say this in your defense, you didn't know that they were going to have 35 rush attempts in there or basically have the ball for 8 or 9 more minutes than the Jets. But like, despite the fact that it was like the game plan that I think most people have been calling for, it wasn't working the way most of us thought it would against this team. And then Richardson had to make plays anyway, which I thought was really, really impressive.
Yeah, that was very interesting. When they were down 24-16, I kind of felt like my takeaway was, well, they went ahead and they implemented the playbook that plays to the strengths of their offense. But the issue, the Eagles playbook, the one thing, though, that I thought was keeping them from actually getting there in a winning way at that point was they didn't have the offensive line that the Eagles did. And that offensive line was really killing them on those run blocking moments and then just some of the free pressures they were getting. And so it's like, well,
is this the villain of the game? Do I need to change? I need to change the header?
Let's just switch to the villain of the game. Why not? Offensive line. Yeah, it's an easy choice for this. Even though, like, this is the true Marvel version because they're trying to do their best. There's 3 rookies starting, 3 backups starting on the offensive line. You never planned to be in that spot, but here it is, and they have a backup and Matt Gonzalez at left tackle, Tanner Bornoliti at center, and Dalton Tucker at right guard. I know there's some debate about who the best center on this team is, so maybe that part of it isn't a huge drop off. But when you go from Bernard Ryman, an established left tackle, to a rookie who's been cross training, it's tremendous, and that's why they have to live in 12 personnel. They're trying to do whatever they can to help that out, but a lot of things were going against them in this game where Dalton Tucker trying to match up with Quinnen Williams, just a horrible mismatch. And some of the blitzes they were bringing, just too much for this offensive line to react to and catch, just with some of the underdeveloped skill sets that are out there. Braden Smith, it was great to see him work through. You got downgraded to question with a personal issue, and played today, and that was big to have that availability. But he has not been the same player ever since he's kind of been these knee injuries have added up, and so all these things were kind of colliding here, where all of a sudden you got Quentin Nelson at left guard, but that was not. It's never enough to just have one lineman. So really, it was shocking to see Jonathan Taylor, who seems by all accounts fresh and healthy, and he's been rolling coming into this game. He had 24 carries for 57 yards and a long of 10. And I believe the gain of 10, you had pointed this out, was a play where it looked like he could have gone to the house, or at least like a really explosive run. And he's like running into Mac Gonzalez, who's sort of spinning around. And that's just kind of the day it was, is that even when they kind of had things maybe blocked on paper, they didn't really execute to the finish of the block in a way that would get to spring anybody. Every time the Colts tried to run to the edge, it was pretty bad. As the game wore on, it was similar to last week when outside that they got that one run early against the Bills, and then they just can't block on the edges right now. So it was problematic, and it put them in a situation where they're lucky that Anthony had the day he did as a passer, but also his ability to escape sacks. Two amazing plays he had where, in nickel corner, blitzed and had him at the waist, and he kind of just shrugged the guy off enough until he threw it away. Another play where I don't know how he got the ball out as the guy's on his back, was able to extend it enough until Josh Downs turns around and throws it into him to get a conversion. So really the athlete they had at quarterback overcame, and the receivers too, overcame what was an offensive line that just looked untenable. Certainly early on in the game, that's why I credit Shane for that game plan. I thought really saved them from some of that by just some of the misdirection, some of the emphasis on zone read, flipping the math in their favor, giving them free blocks, running heavy to kind of limit them from that drop back game that can kind of extend and really get in the heads of linemen. But as the game wore on, when they had to answer scores, it was tough until the quarterback rose up. So that offensive line, it's been a problem since these injuries have added up, and this is probably the worst performance of the year so far.
Braden Smith, I will give Braden Smith this. Will McDonald, the Jets defensive end who leads the team with 8 sacks, had 2 tackles today, no quarterback hits, no sacks. So I will give Braden Smith that one. But yes, I agree with you. I thought for the most part the offensive line really, really struggled. It's a terrible matchup for Tanner Bortolini and Dalton Tucker. Terrible. Quinnen Williams is awesome and was awesome today. But you still need more from them. You still need more from those guys. I'm watching this Bengals Chargers game, and I'm not convinced I know who the Colts need to lose more. Because if the Chargers lose, they go to 6-4, and their upcoming schedule is Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, Bucks, Broncos. So do you want them to come back to the Pack, or do you want the Bengals, who don't have the same schedule? They go Steelers, Cowboys, Titans, Browns, Broncos, Steelers. So do you want Bengals to take a loss there, or do you want the Bengals to take a loss here, assuming the Chargers will come back to you in the next couple of weeks? Or do you want the Chargers to take a loss here so it's easier for them to come back to you the next couple of weeks?
I don't know. I'd probably take the Bengals losing, just because I think Joe Burrow's going to take them on a run, and you don't want both of these teams to get in the playoffs. So you just have one, I think.
My villain of the game, I've been kind of going back and forth on this. I think I'm going to go Gus Bradley. I didn't think it was necessarily a terrible game from him. For the most part, obviously they started the drive with 5 consecutive drives without a first down. Generally, that's good. I thought a lot of that is that Aaron Rodgers is not Aaron Rodgers anymore. He's someone that he's on his way to being someone that used to be Aaron Rodgers. There was one key third down. They They dropped Latu, who had a sack and 3 quarterback hits. And immediately Rodgers had way too much time, got the first down. They ended up stopping them for a field goal on that drive. But you might have got them for nothing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out somebody on the defense, because after that start, they ended up letting the Jets score 27 points, which is their most literally all season. And I think without a glaring position group, although I will say this, the defensive backs had a grand total of 2 passes broken up, both by Jalen Jones. I think I'm going to go with Gus Bradley kind of by default.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, the defense, credit to them. I guess you could say it's also kind of luck. The way that when they forced that field goal late in the game was the one kind of stop they got. They had to, though, because oh my gosh, we could have been doing this podcast if the Jets score a touchdown on that drive and then the Colts go right back down and score, but they can't get the ball back. They would have had this amazing game from Anthony Richardson, the one thing they've needed all year. And we'd be talking about how they lost the game because the defense can't contain Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Like they were like very near disaster today. Now it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we're talking hypotheticals, but that's why they're a worthy villain, I think, is that you give up a season high to the Jets, and it was just weird though, because they played pretty much perfect to start the game. I mean, there was not a single first down from the Jets until like 4 minutes left in the first half. And then it was like they got that one explosive pass play to Devontae Adams. And all of a sudden, like the floodgates just opened for the run-in pass for the Jets, and they couldn't be stopped until the very end. The other thing, too, is like the defense didn't like this. It's ended up kind of being a shootout in a weird way once it got rolling in the second half, and defense just never forced a single turnover. And that's you got to be able to turn the Jets over. You should get one turnover in any game, but to not turn over the Jets, I thought just like all the until Kwity Paye got that sack at the very end of the game, just very few plays between quarterback hits. Like I said, they had 4 until that last play, but you know, passes deflected, 2 total, turnovers 0, just very, very few plays. It felt like, I don't know. It was hard to credit them overly for the Jets kind of throwing short of the sticks and some of the weird stuff they were doing early in the game. So just bad game for the defense, which I guess, I don't know, is this where we pivot into unsung villain? Maybe.
Yeah, we can do that. We can go to unsung villain next.
I'll just go right from that same side of the ball. I'm going to go with the Colts linebackers. Just playing along some of these lines. You talk about making plays, like I have a hard time naming a play that I thought they made. I guess I remember there was one EJ Speed hit, I think, on a perimeter run that I liked, but very hard to come up with many in this game. Also just a weird game where like EJ had he had some bad misplays. He missed that tackle badly on that play I mentioned with Devontae Adams. It was set up there for 2 men on Devontae Adams. He's coming in to help a guy in coverage and just flat out whipped. And it gave them the momentum they needed to go down and score a touchdown and come back in this game. They were dead in the water until that moment. And he also had the delay of game penalty late in the game, which was like just giving life to a team that was trying to come back. So you had the kind of boneheaded plays from EJ Speed, and then Zaire Franklin, 4 total tackles. I mean, just very strange to see that, against an offense as compromised as the Jets, a team that, I know they weren't on the field as much, but they ran, I guess they only ran 49 plays, but they ran the ball 20 times and to have 4 total tackles. And it just felt like whenever the Jets were running away from the penetration of Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, they had lots of success when they could get to the edge, which isn't just the linebackers, but at some point, like you got to go stretch out some of these plays and make it happen. And like I said, I only counted 1 out of EJ Speed. So just the Colts linebackers have had this weird season so far where there's moments where they rise up. Usually it's when they're at home and they're in some of these games where the defense has got to make it happen, and they just kind of key like a great run defense. Or they even did that. The game in Minnesota was kind of a big reason they were in it. But it's like when they're not on, they can really, really slip to the point where, like, when they're like that, the defense is built so much around the center the whole front seven, but sort of the leadership and the sound run defense of those two linebackers in the middle. And just, I thought really one of the worst games given an opponent that was incredibly vulnerable today.
I was going to give my unsung villain. We're going to take you through some unsung villain and hero confusion here. So I was going to give my unsung villain to Julian Blackman, who only had one tackle, which seems weird for a strong safety. It probably is. I think it probably is. There's also like a weird part of my brain, though, that wonders if like Rodgers was avoiding him because he was in the right place. Is that possible?
Yeah.
He probably should have more in the run game, let's be honest. But like in a game where a lot of the Jets throws, like the leading receiver for the Jets was Breece Hall in terms of receptions. He had 7 catches for 43 yards. They really did a good job on Garrett Wilson. Man, 4 for 18. I didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Kenny Yeboah had that touchdown. Both of the Jets' touchdown passes were like short little throws that the Colts kind of lost track of people. I don't know. That one's kind of a tough one.
I think it's at least. I think that's at least fair. Where maybe he's being avoided, but like, even if you're being avoided, yeah, you got to impact the game. Whether it's run defense, something like that. Like this is an offense you can make plays against. Whether it's even just plays in the run game, getting off the field in the second half. So I just don't. I think the whole defense kind of has to wear this outside of. I liked how Grover Stewart and Kwity Paye played, and thought Latu had some good rushes. But a wide majority of the guys on defense, I don't know that a lot of them should get a pass, really, for how this went.
Wait, why did the Bengals have to get ball back?
I don't know.
Well, we've been talking. Evan McPherson has missed 2 kicks. And it's still 27-27. And I thought I just watched Evan McPherson miss a kick, and now Joe Burrow has the ball again. Don't know how that happened. Unsung hero of the game. Lots of options here. I guess I'll bat lead off an unsung hero. Alec Pierce. Let's go Alec Pierce. Only 3 catches. Obviously, the 39-yarder. I think one of the reasons I'm giving this to him is that he was the one who kind of tipped off Richardson, it sounded like. Alex said that he noticed that he knew that the play that they were going to call, which is an option route with Josh Downs and kind of an alert with Pierce, that the corner would probably bite on it. He felt like Sauce Gardner was going to bite on it. And he told him before the drive, hey, if we get to that play, I bet the corner bites. And he did. Obviously, Pierce made the catch, 39 yards on that. But also 2 other catches from Pierce. He had a 16-yard catch against DJ Reed to help set up a field goal. They were at the 45. They were at the Colts 45. That got them into. Really, that's the whole play for the field goal. That set up the 56-yarder. After that, they went incomplete, 1-yard run, no gain on a real, probably the weirdest call of the game from Steichen, honestly. But that set up the 56-yard field goal, so they take back the lead and go up 16-14. And then his other catch of the day was a crosser against Gardner for 19 yards. To set up Josh Downs' touchdown a couple plays later. Just kind of a like perfect unsung hero type game where I don't think you're coming away from the game thinking about Alec Pierce. But, man, that's 3 really, really big catches and a really important thing to notice going into a game-winning drive. You know, Shane Steichen even said in the press conference, you have to have that chunk play to Pierce because then it puts you in the driver's seat for the rest of that touchdown drive.
Yeah, that also kind of got them in this hurry-up mode where they were kind of dictating the personnel and some of the coverages and just what the Jets were going to do. That got them on their heels, so they kind of got to be the aggressor. So that was a good one. I'm going to go with the other receiver today that popped off. Josh Downs is my unsung hero. Josh is just on a roll right now, kind of without whatever quarterback he plays with. One of the only guys consistently bringing it throughout that on this offense. Today he had 5 catches for 84 yards, caught every target that he saw. And the thing with Josh this season is that he's having his best year based largely on volume. He's leading the Colts in yards per game at about 60. Today, had a little more than that. But the thing is, his efficiency has gone down slightly from last year because it's like that volume boost went up so much, and his offense on the whole is less efficient. But I thought Josh was playing better this year than last year. And to me, it was just a matter of like, if they can get something figured out with this quarterback rotating, and he's faced that ping pong more than anyone because he didn't play the first 2 games with Anthony. So it's all been like 2 games here, 2 games there, 2 games, 2 very different quarterbacks in an offense that's the offensive line's kind of cratered since he's come back. But I thought, like, if the Colts were to have this big offensive day breakthrough with the passing game, that's when we see Josh Downs' efficiency correct itself. And today, 16.8 yards per target. That's just pretty fantastic. And it was just the moments he provided were so clutch. So, he had obviously the 10-yard touchdown. It was the biggest highlight where they
lined up wrong.
They lined up wrong, and he was joking like, "You're not going to keep me from getting my touchdown." So he kind of motioned him back so that he and Jonathan flipped sides, and he runs an angle route, and it was just right there. He set that up with that 17-yard catch. He just was like Johnny on the spot on so many plays. He had that 3rd down catch where Anthony Richardson was able to break out of pressure, throw to him, but like he had to dip around that defender, and you see that spatial awareness. I thought he was great as a punt returner too, but the play that I actually think was his best today is probably going to be forgotten in the way that this became so much about the 4th quarter. But on the very first drive the Colts had, they were facing a 3-and-out until Anthony Richardson kind of lofts the ball, and Josh Downs just lays out for a 31-yard catch. It was like somebody in the course of somebody on this side of the ball was going to have to lift this quarterback up until he's in a confident space again. And I thought that was a great way for the guy who's had Anthony Richardson's back more than anybody vocally since his benching. He's been the guy that Anthony's called before and after the benching. He's the one that took his back about how the tap out was overblown and how tough this guy is and how badly he wants to be out there. Like, he knew he was going to have to come through while this kid is still – he's trying to find his touch. He's trying to find his footing as a quarterback. And I just thought, like, to back up that kind of talk and fire with play like that, it's just tremendous. And I think it's safe to say now it's been a large enough window that well, I'll save that one for the one to go on. But I have a take on Josh Downs that I tap back in. And I realize I don't want to spoil myself. But Josh, another great game out of him, and it's what had to happen to get Anthony Richardson rolling. Number
of the day. Do you have your number of the day ready to go?
Not yet.
I've got mine. My number of the day is 5.5. That is the number of sacks Kwity Paye has on the season. He leads the team by 2. He had 2 today. You may not remember it because they happened on the last drive. They both happened on the last drive, which is still important. I know the Jets didn't have any timeouts, but it's really hard for Aaron Rodgers to turn back the clock and lead a comeback if he's spending the entire drive on the ground. And Kwity Paye is never – I don't think he's ever really going to be a first rush, win off the snap, sort of force edge rusher that dominates a game and takes it over. Honestly, Latu was probably better today from a just creating pressure standpoint. I thought he was eating the left tackle's lunch for New York, but Kwity Paye is really, really good at hustling and disengaging and closing down on quarterbacks in the pocket. And you know what? Those sacks count too.
Absolutely. Kwity is a great compliment, honestly, to what Latu was drafted to be, what they hope he'll be. Hasn't fully what did I miss here?
The Bengals defense just choked. That's what you missed. Oh, wow.
3 plays, 84 yards for the Chargers. Again, I don't know if that's good for the Colts or not. It's just weird.
Wow.
But yeah, Kwity Paye. It's a good shout out for Kwity Paye because he could have easily been someone's unsung hero. 2 sacks. Like we're talking about guys not making plays on the defense. He was the one guy, making the big plays on the defense. My number of the day, I think I'm going to go with 75%, which is the completion rate that Anthony Richardson had on throws 10 yards or further today. 75% completed, 9 of 12, which I saw from Next Gen Stats is 5th highest in the league this season for any game. So there's a lot of stats we've brought up. I've often brought up to kind of support the idea that Anthony Richardson has this upside as far as whether it's yards per completion, kind of his rushing efficiency, the ability to get first downs, certainly the air yards and some of those, but like the comeback constantly was completion percentage, like efficiency at this stuff. Well, that to me is the perfect combination of you are moving the ball down the field, but you're completing a high rate of passes. I mean, 75% for low rate would be for like short depth of target would be good. And he was able to do it on those throws down the field. That's ultimately why they won the game, is his ability to go 10 plus yards down the field, get first downs, not just have to crawl down the field, but do it at a highly efficient rate. That's how he ends up with bonus number of the day, 9.1 yards per attempt. That is scorching, especially for he didn't go that far down the field.
Bonus number of the day, maybe numbers of the day. I've never heard a better argument to not care a ton about passer rating than the fact that Aaron Rodgers finished today's game with 114.7 rating and Richardson finished with 106.5. Yeah. That's not what happened. Nope.
No, definitely not when Aaron Rodgers had 162 total yards passing if you take out the sacks.
Yep.
162.
Yep. And looks like 2 explosive plays, maybe 3. Anyway, only 6.3 yards per attempt. So that's number of the day. Now we get to the interlude. We start with the game day observation. I'm realizing this is becoming a kind of we have a habit here, a tradition here, or Joel, or I have a habit, a tradition here of taking shots at wherever we are. Guess what? We're doing it again. The MetLife Stadium's not good. It's bad. It's terrible. I don't like it. It's like if it didn't say MetLife on it, it would look like a government warehouse or something. Like I think you said it looks like it holds Area 51.
Yeah, it looks like where they filmed Independence Day.
Yeah, or like that's where they hold like the Batmobile. That's where Bruce Wayne keeps the Batmobile. It's not where that you play football. And honestly, once you get inside, it's not any better. Like I know the Jets and Giants both play there, but and so you can't like necessarily have like a distinguishing Giants feature or whatever. But there's nothing like personable about that stadium at all. It's just a silver bowl. I think the way I always put it is like if you play video games, it's like the stadium to me that is create like the template stadium. Like if you're gonna back in Madden when you could like build your old when you could build your own team and you got to like kind of build the stadium, like that was what you started with, was the template stadium, MetLife. It's nothing. It's not great. I don't like it. I think it every time we come here too. There's just no personality to it. Nope. Like when you walk up to Lambeau or Lucas Oil, trying to think of another good stadium like this. I mean, obviously some of the new ones like Allegiant, like those stadiums have they have a look to them. Like Lucas Oil's is the brick, Green Bay's got the green steel girders, like they have a look to them. This one looks like something you came up with for a video game.
Also the fact that like it's just parked in New Jersey for 2 teams in New York City. And I understand totally the situation where there's no space in New York City, but if that's going to be the case, you'd think the trade-off would be that like it would be this cool stadium, this cool hub of football, and it does not feel that way. Now, granted, maybe I'm sure, no doubt, the tailgating and all that stuff would be different if the team wasn't what it is right now. But I remember, like, you go to Kansas City Chiefs are another one of those where, like, the stadium doesn't as much feel like part of the city. You don't have the backdrop. It's not like Lucas Oil that's right embedded in the downtown of the city. But at Kansas City, you have the most massive tailgating scene you're going to find, and then also just an iconic stadium, and especially how loud it gets. Buffalo is like this too. Those ones that do take that Buffalo, like, more suburban type approach. This one's just out there, and I don't think the players would rate it very high either because of the number of injuries that happen at MetLife Stadium. So just very dated. Just feels like there's probably not a lot of great alternative ideas floating out there for, two New York teams to find a new path. But I agree with that. Now, just to build on that, just very little. It's hard to be around the city and know that, like, the Jets had a game going on. You just don't see, like, memorabilia. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it right now. Like, there's a lot going on in New York. There's a lot of teams here, and they just seem to, like, you got two bad NFL teams right now, so it's just not very front of mind for people. You don't like just see that gear out the way that you would anywhere else, even when the team's bad. If you go to Chicago or Cleveland or Pittsburgh or any of those places, you'll see that gear out. So I don't know. It's just a weird vibe between they play in New Jersey and the people here kind of not into them at the moment.
I was in Manhattan on Saturday night. Nate wasn't because he decided to drive around for 3 hours looking for Chinese food. That's not actually what happened.
Nate, things that leave Joel terribly vexed.
I was in Manhattan on Saturday night, and I ate at a pizza place where the only spot was outside. And it was in a fairly busy neighborhood. Everyone was walking past me, and I know, like, the Yankees hats are kind of like part of the New York. Like, it's not that there's a fashion statement there. It's not just about, like, fandom. But I saw one Jets hat in an entire night in the city in the middle of football season.
Yeah, and I don't remember seeing many
Subway, whatever districts I was in, all that stuff. Yeah, that was it. Just one.
And I didn't see a whole lot of Jets, car flags or bumper stickers while I was on my 2.5-hour drive for Chinese food either. So you're right. It was a little hard to see the pageantry.
We don't need to tell the story, but just know, like, Nate wants all of you to know, if you go to New York, don't assume there will be parking whenever you drive to a restaurant, right? That's the moral of the story.
That's kind of the moral of it. Also, If you drive a big car, it's hard to move sometimes.
The moral of the story is take the train. That's the moral.
I would solve all of that stuff. Get a nap and take the train and make it a night.
3 football things that gave me joy. 3 football things that left Nate terribly, terribly vexed. Number 1 football thing that gave me joy. I think I brought this up before. I'm going to bring it up again. You've already touched on it. I love Josh Downs' aggressiveness as a punt returner. Love it. Love it. Like, he averaged 12.3 yards per return. I think all 3 of them were kind of nervy. Like, should he take it? Should he not? A different punt returner would have fair caught it. I know there's a risk there. I know most people are thinking about that risk. I've moved past that because now I just like watching him return punts. That 12.3 yards on three returns, that's hidden yardage that they really needed in a game where at times they really struggled with field position.
Yeah, it's just another example where Josh Downs just seems to meet any moment on a football field. I don't know if I've ever covered a young player who seems to have his sense of football feel, savvy, IQ, spatial awareness. Like, it's pretty crazy. And so that's been put on display by him just getting thrown in there as a punt returner, kind of out of necessity and on the fly. Last year it was because of Isaiah McKenzie got kicked off the team, and then this year because Anthony Gould wasn't making those decisions right, and he just seamless. So that's another kind of reason why he's my unsung hero. Football thing that left me terribly vexed. I don't know if the Jets scouted the Colts offense, but playing them in man coverage on third downs. I mean, like, you're just going to give Anthony Richardson scramble lanes if he's going to do it. But he didn't even have to get to that because you leave a guy like A.D. Mitchell so open on a crosser. That's literally what just happened last week with him. Was his best play on a crosser. Like, I mean, I know you got to play man coverage, and when you have Sauce Gardner, the DBs they have, I guess that's your kind of way of saying we're going to live with our strengths. But I don't know, man. That just like it's been the thing that's befuddled this passing game with Anthony Richardson all season long, was making him sit there and decipher within zones and build that chemistry. And he hasn't played with these guys in 3 weeks, and you just gave him man coverage so that if he hits a reasonable throw to an open guy at a short depth of target, he can take it 33 yards like he did. So I don't know. That's do your homework, Jets.
Number 2 football thing that gave me joy, and it's his own defense. Like, it's basically, everyone said it's basically Gus Bradley's defense because it's Robert Saleh's defense, and Robert Saleh considers Gus Bradley a football father. Anyway, number 2 football thing.
It was Robert Saleh's defense, and then they kicked him out. So maybe it's true.
Number 2 football thing that gave me joy, EJ Speed going through a player to tackle another player. Not necessarily the greatest day for EJ from a tackling perspective. He missed the tackle on Devontae Adams that allowed the first big play. But that one was fun. that one on the side, there's a plays on the sideline and he's getting blocked, and he just said, what if I just jump over the blocker and tackle the guy? Plays like that give me joy.
Football thing that left me terribly vexed. To build on my last point, I give A.D. Mitchell credit for his amazing wheels and being open and catching it, but trust those wheels and just keep running up the sideline, man. He would have run away for an easy touchdown, and I don't know why he cut back inward to cut back into a tackle, and then you get down at the 2, and they scored a touchdown. It's like, we needed A.D. Mitchell's first touchdown, man.
You could tell he wanted it too.
Yeah, maybe wanted it so much.
Number 3 football thing that gave me joy, Anthony Richardson completing 2 passes while being taken down and somehow holding off a pass rusher for what felt like forever before throwing it out of bounds. The throw to Josh Downs is the best one. I know the Trey Sermon one probably gave some people some Carson Wentz vibe, but I don't mind those if there's only one player there and it goes straight to his chest. I really don't. That's the kind of thing that we celebrate quarterbacks with bigger names for. So, but the one that really, really got me is Josh Downs. I watched that play several times. We wrote an extra story on it. He wasn't holding him off. He was getting tackled. Like, he got tackled, but he's in the act of getting tackled, and somehow he got the ball out, not just to Josh Downs, but I counted. He was on the 42. He was on the 42, and the ball traveled to the 29. He threw that ball 13 yards in the air, and they ended up picking up the first down. That's fun. I'm sorry, it's fun. I don't have anything else to say. Quarterbacks doing that is fun.
Yeah, he's an alien. I mean, you have a guy who's 22 years old, built like few in the history of the game physically. I mean, everything we talked about in the hero of the game was him actually doing quarterback stuff. But that's the stuff we see a lot, is those physical skills and physical upside. Believe it or not, physical upside is important. So the last football thing that left me terribly vexed is quarterbacks turning into dust before our eyes. That's Aaron Rodgers. That was Joe Flacco before this. Very old quarterbacks. I understand
Hey, that was a lot of olds. Some of us are almost as old as Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco in this podcast. That felt targeted. Targeting 15-yard penalty on review, you might be kicked out of the next game.
Well, I said it because I know you agree with me, since you said if you're old, you can't climb a mountaintop. So I knew I was playing to the crowd with that.
The funny thing is, I was so wrong about that. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl at like 46, 3 years ago.
So here's my point with the old thing. Tom Brady is to football what LeBron James is to basketball. They are the outlier. They are the anomaly. Mm-hmm. They are other people trying to do that thing at that age is going to look terrible most of the time. It's not meant to be done. So it's like, I understand if you want to have an older-ish quarterback like Matthew Stafford, kind of where he's at in his career, kind of squeeze a little bit out. But we're learning that once you get into that upper 30s range, most of the time, it doesn't work. And when it starts to go, it really, really, really goes. And that's just kind of how I felt watching Aaron Rodgers, where yes, like when his first read was open, when he had check down break open, when there's a coverage bust, his football IQ still works to get the ball out and get it to that wide open player, and it can work. But like counting on that is not really the way to live. And it felt like any time that Aaron Rodgers wanted to, if he patted the ball, pump faked, it was done. Like there's the physical characteristics for him aren't there anymore, and I think that's just kind of why the Jets are where they're at right now.
So the rule is if the quarterback is older than Joel, it's too old.
That's fair.
I don't know how I feel about that. That brings us past the interlude.
If a running back's older than Nate, then they're probably not going to be very good. So I don't take offense to that.
Well, yeah, it's a lot younger position. I'm sad now. We got to get into this. This might color the last couple of categories here. Too much credit, too little credit. I know you're excited about this, so actually, I'm going to make you wait just a little bit longer. Too much credit. Also, I made you wait because I accidentally deleted the too little credit banner.
I'm trying to think of who's. I don't know. Like the credit is pretty much all on going to Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, and his wide receivers, which feels very, very appropriate. I guess I'll just double up on kind of an earlier point. The Colts defense, there's talk about how they got that, like I said, they got that stop at the end of the game. And it was like, to me, it was like finally they survived. That by stop, it was force a field goal. But it's just tough to watch. Like pretty much every drive in the second half outside of one got points for the Jets. Like it was about as bottoming out of a defensive performance, I thought, as you could have from that final 5 minutes of the first half on. Now, look, before that, it was very good. But, like, again, we talk about too much credit. I mean, it's always nice. It's always impressive when you can force 3 and outs at the rate they were. I'm not saying they don't get any credit for that, but it's the Jets. It's an offensive line that's incredibly compromised, a quarterback who's not moving, quarterback that when he has to throw off his back foot or after an adjustment just doesn't have the arm the way that he used to make those adjustments, who was just flat out missing throws early in the game. Like there were some first downs out there that, Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams were breaking free on it. He was throwing behind them or throwing at their feet. I mean, I thought they were getting bailed out for a long time in this game by Aaron Rodgers having to do the kind of drop back throw, intermediate and adjust type game. Where it flipped and got in the Jets' favor was largely when they ran to the perimeter and Colts couldn't handle that at all. And then when they broke open a couple of guys for kind of basically busted coverage touchdown passes. So I just don't know that the Colts defense really deserves credit in this game. Like they survived, so there's no reason to we don't have to light them on fire, but it was close to that. It really was like if it was a touchdown instead of a field goal in that one drive late in the game, it would have been, I think, kind of one of the all-time collapses. So I think they just really survived today.
Too much credit for me is the run game. I don't think we need to get into it too much. But I know what all the players said, but just 24 carries for 57 yards is not good. It's bad.
No.
And 35 carries for 91 yards overall is not good. So, well, I do think that the players are right and had some effect on Richardson and helped him settle down. That's not the most efficient. I think it's getting too much credit for a game that really came down to Anthony Richardson's arm. Now,
finally, too much credit, and you're saying the Colts players are giving themselves too much credit. I like that.
Oops.
kind of true. Because the
Um,
stat that jumped out to me is 35 carries, and the longest run was 10 yards.
yeah. That's only one explosive run. Now, Nate, I know has been excited about this category. I finally got the banner back up. It is too little. It is too little credit.
There we are. All right. Getting too little credit for today is Joe Flacco. If Joe Flacco was 5 years younger, I don't think we're in this spot. He was available to sign 5 years ago, so in an alternate reality, it could have been. I do not believe the Colts and Shane Steichen when he says that Joe Flacco's play did not have to do with going back to Anthony Richardson. I do believe that as things have played out, they were not making the switch. It wasn't about the playoffs. It wasn't about that. It was about sitting Anthony Richardson down and rewiring him. But I don't believe that that was supposed to be a 2-week ordeal. I think they hoped they could buy as long of a leash as they needed to buy with this. And I think even though they were up against tough playoff teams and the Vikings and the Bills, it was they knew they might lose those games, but they were still going to be in the playoff hunt if they could win this one. I still think Joe Flacco would have started this game if the offense looked even competent or solid, but maybe just a little short. If he won one of those games, like if they pulled out that Vikings game that was not the highest scoring, but then they got blown out by the Bills, I still think they're probably keeping it going with Joe Flacco a little bit longer. I think they made the switch in that moment because they didn't really have any way to explain not doing it. And again, like Joe Flacco, if we talk about like when we made him the villain in those games, he's trying to do his best and he's made plays in this league before, but he's 39 years old and I just don't think he has it physically to play the way he used to. When you talk about a guy who like at his best was a quarterback you could win with, who would make some plays but would turn it over some. So he was like, he didn't have that high end in his peak to where like once he gets older, it's not the same as a Tom Brady hanging on, or even we're at this spot where, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is just a few months older than him. We see that drop off. So it's just unfortunate with age, but I think Joe Flacco, signing here at age 39 and being in this spot to be the backup here and the way that this transpired, I think he's not getting enough credit for the day that Anthony had. Also, it seems like if Anthony was supposed to learn from him, maybe that happened. Maybe that played into it. I don't know. Maybe he deserves some credit for that. But I just feel like it took an interesting confluence of events to get Anthony Richardson to the bench for 2 weeks for us to freak out as much as we did. Then he comes back, and here we are. It's like we're back on the roller coaster, and for right now, they hit the thrill.
I don't have anything to add to that one. I don't have anything to add. Too little credit for me is going to go to Latu. A sack, 2 quarterback hits. The production waned a little bit. He had one big run stuff too. I can't remember exactly when that was. But he's a guy who, honestly, for the most part, has to some degree struggled a little bit more than, or maybe he doesn't have the big sack numbers that I think some people were expecting based on the way he. Oh, it was on a pass. He dropped Breece Hall for -5 yards. But a pretty good game from Latu. 3 tackles, 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits. I don't know that tells the full story on him. I'd like to see the pressure numbers. I think he was pretty good on the left side, or rushing off the blind side against another rookie, another first rounder, Fashanu. So he's too little credit for me. That brings us to the last 2 categories, the most important categories, kind of. One to throw away and one to go on. We always start this with one to throw away for obvious reasons. Nate, what is something people are talking about today that we'll throw away the rest of the season?
I think it's the Richardson-Taylor combination struggling as much as it did, that like teams have figured it out or that they're not going to be able to run. I thought today was a confluence of just the severe mismatch up front between the Jets defensive line and Colts offensive line. I thought, some newness to the run game installs the Colts are putting in. I think that will get better as they go. But mostly I just don't this is, I guess it could always get worse if they lose Braden Smith or Quentin Nelson. But I think for the most part, right now is the first time they've had to start 3 rookies on the offensive line. And granted, Dalton Tucker's going to stay there for the rest of the year unless they make a switch, but they're not going to get Will Fries back this year. Maybe, you can argue that it's maybe Tanner Bortolini is their best center, and that's, maybe there's not a huge upgrade out there. I don't know. We'll see if Ryan Kelly can come back and how that factors in. But I do think once they get Bernard Ryman back at left tackle, that should be a significant change from a rookie. Matt Gonzalez is fighting like crazy to be able to handle this and patch it together. But like I said, he's in the spot Bernard Ryman was when he was a rookie, kind of get just thrown in, just absolutely thrown into the mix when you're not quite ready. Ryman's deal was different. He was kind of slower developing and needed to add weight. Gonzalez, though, was just cross-train a bunch of positions, and that's the hardest one to try to play. So I think getting Ryman back, even just at that one position, it's the most important position. I think you'll see a trickle-down effect where Quentin Nelson can help out with Tanner Bortolini more, and it's just not going to feel quite the same way. And then mostly I just think we're going to have moments where we see the explosive upside of these two, Taylor and Richardson, where you give them even just a couple of creases like they didn't get today, but just a little bit better blocking in some of these areas. And that can make all the difference, where a play that, their good plays are not going from, you get one extra block for them. It's not going from 5 yards to 8 yards. It's like going from 5 yards to 20 sometimes. Just that's what can happen with these guys who can run 4.4 or better and can run people over when they really get rolling in the open field. So it's been such a great track record so far for both of those guys as runners when they've been in the NFL to where I think if you put them together and let them play off each other, I don't think there will be many days that are going to be like this out of them in the run game.
Okay. I might regret my one to throw away. We're going to say it. We're going to see what happens as the rest of the season goes. I think it might be time to throw away the idea that the Colts should cut Matt Gay. His season numbers now are 19 of 22 on field goals, and he made a 56-yarder today. He's now 3 of 6 on 50-yard attempts. I will say this: there was no weather today. It was an absolutely gorgeous day in New York. But for context here, so outside of Chris Boswell from Pittsburgh, who is 29 of 30 this season, having an absolutely incredible season, Gay is tied for 4th in the league in made field goals. He does have a game on a lot of other players. Most of the other guys around him have missed 3 field goals. Cameron Dicker from the Chargers is 21 of 23. So he's having a really good season too. But there's, Evan McPherson from Cincinnati is 15 of 21. That's a big name. There's a couple guys in here who are 18 of 20, but just is it a perfect season? No. Did he struggle from 50 early? Is it possible he's not done missing from there? Yes, all that stuff's possible. But I think right now with him at 86% makes, I'd be curious to see this if kickers are actually worse this year a little bit, just from the numbers I'm looking at right now. You know what? There's some NFC guys too. Washington's kicker is having a good year. Brandon Aubrey's having a good year. So there's some guys but even those guys have 2 misses. His 3 misses are kind of right in line with the rest of the league outside of Boswell. I think he's kind of kicked his way back into steady category. I'm not going to say like Pro Bowler, but steady. Maybe it's time to stop thinking cut him at every turn.
Well, also he's perfect under 50 yards. So cutting to me comes when it's like problematic. A guy's just in such a rut, especially the fact that you can say there's something to an alternative that can be better. But if he's just 3 of 6 on 50 plus, that's a hard kick. You're not going to find alternatives to do it. And also I think what's just there's been one trend with Matt Gay. He came in, they signed him as a Pro Bowler, came in, was amazing to start out, had that historic game in Baltimore. And then he had a real rut end of last year, starting this year, when injuries struck. the hip last year and then the hernia surgery this year and some lingering injuries around that. Look, maybe we'll like the way I think this could go south is if he has more injuries, certainly possible, and maybe at some point to discuss durability and that kind of thing with him. But to me, you talk about abilities, and now that he's healthy, confidence level in him, I think the way he's kicking right now, as long as there's not an injury situation, I don't have a lot of concern with him.
That leaves us to the last one to go on. Something we'll be talking about the rest of the season that we're talking about now. We'll be talking about the rest of the season. What's your one to go on? Do you have yours yet? I don't know if I have.
So I stopped myself earlier with Josh Downs, but the one to go on is that the Colts have finally a number 2 receiver to Michael Pittman Jr., a steady number 2 receiver. That's Josh Downs. So since I got here in 2021, it's been a journey to find really anybody to produce at a consistent level who's not named Michael Pittman Jr., who every year since then has led them and led the Colts in receptions and yards. There's talent elsewhere, but it's been hard to get it to consistently come through until they got Josh Downs now, who's getting that done at the moment. So he came back, after missing the first 2 games, had a slow third game. Since then, in the games he's had since, he's played 7 games, and he has topped 60 in all but one of those. 60 yards and plus, that is reliable. You do 60 yards across a full season. If you were to play 17 games, and you're at almost 1,000 yards. On the season right now, he's up to 50 catches, 567 yards, and 4 touchdowns. His 17-game pace, which is misleading because I know he missed 2. He can only play 15 max. But just to give you an idea of the kind of player this is, across 17 games, that'd be 94 catches, 8 touchdowns, more than 1,000 yards. And the way that he's done it between Joe Flacco, it's like he came back and it was Anthony Richardson, then Joe Flacco, then Anthony Richardson, then Joe Flacco. Now I expect Anthony Richardson. So to be topping 60 yards in pretty much every game, I think we're pretty clearly there. And just in a football, like the concern with him coming into the league was, would he hold up at his size? And you wondered kind of what was like the high end upside. And maybe we're still wondering that, like, can he play like a number 1 as a slot receiver? I don't know. But as a slot receiver, he very much reminds me of the type of player Golden Tate was. And Golden Tate, once he got his quarterback stability and in a great offense, which, by the way, was coordinated by Jim Bob Cooter, same as here, he became a Pro Bowl 1,300-yard receiver. So I don't put that out of the realm of possibility for Josh. But at the very least, I think his floor is this type of 800-plus yard receiver who's a big-time reliable option. And to get that with what they've been – the journey they've been on to find anything outside Michael Pittman Jr., that is a huge step in trying to fix the quarterback carousels, giving whoever it is at quarterback, and now Anthony Richardson, multiple options to work with. I think Josh has done that.
We'll go along the same lines. It's time to think of Alec Pierce as one of the NFL's best deep threats, if you weren't before. There are 2 players in the NFL averaging more than 20 yards per catch right now. It's Alec Pierce leading the league at 22.7. In second place is Jamison Williams, spoiler alert for next week, at 22.4. Pierce leads the Colts with 590 yards despite having almost half the catches that Josh Downs has. He has 26 to Downs has 50. But that's the role he's going to play. He's playing like it's a number 3, which I think sounds like a pejorative, but you got to have this. Well, you don't got to have this guy, but it really helps to have this guy if your number 1s aren't necessarily like an A.J. Brown who's averaging 18.7 yards per catch, or some of these other guys. Like a lot of the guys in the high receiving yards, Justin Jefferson, those guys. Like a lot of these guys, though, in the high yards per reception are guys with lower catch volume and big yardage, and they're there for the explosive play. Alec Pierce is really, really good at the explosive play. I haven't counted up how many he has this season, but it's pretty clear he can produce them on a fairly regular basis when he has the right quarterbacks to do it. He's taken a step forward this year. Like I said, does that mean that he's going to be a Pro Bowler? Not necessarily, but he's definitely a very, very valuable part of this offense, and has kind of come into his own and proven himself. It's even been his uptick, and this probably has a lot. Like I think Reggie would tell me, a lot of this has to do with the quarterback. I would agree with him, but after today, he's up to 26 catches now on 44 targets. That's 59%. I mean, it's a 59% catch percentage on his targets. It's pretty darn good for somebody who catches so many balls down the field and spends so much of his time running deep. His average depth of target coming into today's game was 21.4 yards, by far the most of his career, and his catch percentage has gone up, not down. So this is a player who's proving like that he can be one of the league's best deep threats. Is he more than that? I don't know, not necessarily, but I mean, I think a lot of teams would take. He's on pace for from as far as for a 17-game season. He's on pace for 900 yards, which is pretty good. It's very helpful for the offense. I think if you look at this receiver thing, and maybe this is why we're talking about this right now, if Michael Pittman Jr.'s back isn't hurt, and I do think his drop today had something to do with his back being hurt, because he's told you before, right, that he has trouble extending.
Yeah.
And he didn't get his hands up fast enough. I think that's part of it. But if you have a normal Michael Pittman Jr., we've said this before, I kind of like the receivers they got, especially with A.D. Mitchell starting to make some plays.
Well, yeah, it's like Alec Pierce. We'll see if he can be more than the deep threat. But if
the thing is, if Downs and Pittman are both at full strength, he doesn't need to be. That's
the thing. He may be an absolutely perfect fit if he is just an elite deep threat. And I say just because, just in the sense that that's limited, but that's so valuable. I mean, explosive plays are living at the heart of victories. And it's interesting how he and Josh Downs have almost the same number of yards. I think you said Pierce at 590. Josh Downs is at 567. They have the same number of touchdowns. Pierce has played 2 more games, but that catch difference is like massive. And it creates such this good combination where you have that guy who lives on volume and consistency underneath and in the slot. And you have the guy outside who is, you're not going to go to him as often. He's not going to have obviously as high of a catch percentage, but still super effective in the fact that like those two are very related to each other when they run option routes on the same side of the field. Like you pointed out how that, like those two are those are two of the smartest younger receivers you're going to meet in the NFL. And they're building chemistry with each other. They've grown very close this year. And they've had to pull this thing together as Michael Pittman Jr. has been limited, and he's been the guy that's made this go. As A.D. Mitchell until the past couple of weeks has not, it's been moving a little too fast for him. Like these two guys, and then you look at the rest of the offense. They don't have tight ends who produce, and then running backs catch it. Like this
no
is
no excuses for the tight ends. None.
No, yeah, and that
especially the receiving tight ends.
Yeah. Today, by the way, we haven't talked about them for a reason. They had 29 yards today. On a team
Mo Alley Cox is valuable as a blocker who has essentially made a few catches this season when he's been asked to. But the rest of this tight end group, and Alley Cox is not as productive as normal. But like I'm judging him against like every other team's blocking tight end. His numbers are in line with where they need to be. Like blocking tight ends aren't supposed to get a lot of stuff. This is like a bonus. I don't know. We're giving this doesn't fit a category, but
Dylan.
I
think it's like a bonus.
They have two tight ends. They have 2 tight ends who are supposed to be receiving tight ends. They have 10 catches this season. Tyler Goodson has 10 catches. Trey Sermon has 12.
Well, and they have 2 tight ends that they play every game who are supposed to be blockers, and they don't run the ball that well. For like especially the areas where those guys can impact on the perimeter, has been tough. But to get back to the point, the point I was making is that, like, if either Josh Downs or Alec Pierce weren't having a really good year, this offense would have careened off a cliff. At least the passing game careened off a cliff, because Michael Pittman Jr. is not nearly himself. They don't have tight ends. They don't have running backs who produce. And A.D. Mitchell wasn't ready to go for about half a season in terms of produce and be reliable. These two have carried this thing in different ways, very different ways, but ways that play off each other pretty wonderfully. And to have those two on rookie contracts right now, when they just paid Michael Pittman Jr., if they can get Michael Pittman Jr. right and they have him on the opposite side of these two working their option routes, playing off each other high and low, and then you get A.D. Mitchell doing a little bit more of the yak stuff he's done the past 2 weeks. Like, this is all set up there from the wide receiver standpoint to really let Anthony Richardson grow as a passer. And it's needed because of how little they did to add those type of guys at tight end and running back.
That is it for the First Impressions edition of the Colts Cover-2 podcast. The Colts beat the Jets today and the 3-game losing streak. They get Anthony Richardson's best game so far. Bad news is that the Detroit Lions are up next. They're very good. They're very, very explosive. I have zero bad things to say about the Lions. And also, there's probably going to be a lot of Lions fans at Lucas Oil.
Oh, yeah.
So, we'll get into that in midweek. But for the moment, revel in Anthony Richardson's best performance, Colts fans. We'll talk to you a little bit later.